Welcome back to Newsmaker Sunday. Tyco, which is now known as Johnson Controls, is working with the community to address the public and keep residents informed about the impact of the Pfas contamination. Local 5's Aaron Taylor talked with John Perkins, the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety of Johnson Controls, about this effort.
What is Tyco doing to address this problem?
So again, we've been working diligently with the community to ensure that our #1 priority is to install a clean, safe, and reliable source of drinking water for the community. We have been working with community officials, stakeholders, to really ensure that we make that a reality by the end of 2020. Over the last year, we have installed 2 remedial measures to deal with surface water flow. Those remedial measures have been working successfully to remove all concentrations of Pfas from the surface water, and as well as we've been working with the City of Marinette specifically to remove all of their biosolids at a cost of about $3 million.
And how are you working with the state to solve these problems?
Sure. So we have been working with the DNR specifically in collaboration with respect to all of our data that we've collected within the facility or within the study area. And we continue to work with them very collaboratively to not only share our reports, but ensure that they are up to date with our activities and they provide oversight and review of all of our documents. We want to ensure that the public is informed. We've established a website about 2 years ago. We've updated that website to make sure that residents can receive real-time information. We've also supplied a newsletter, a monthly newsletter that goes out to each and every one of the residents to update them on our progress, as well as we've established a 1-800 number over the last 3 years that residents can call in to ask questions or to get feedback with respect to our progress on the project.
And that was John Perkins, the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety of Johnson Controls, talking about the efforts of the company. Jeff Lamont and Cindy Boyle with Save Our H2O back with us now. Jeff, your thoughts on what you just heard?
Tyco is not moving right now at the speed we'd like to see them. They've been, in my opinion, butting heads with the DNR quite a bit recently in reference to a work plan for investigating the biosolids that were spread on the fields. And they've suggested a highly atypical, unusual circumstance to essentially give DNR the money, let them do the investigation with one of their own consultants, which is just unheard of really in this business. And so they are moving forward, but they're not moving forward, in my opinion, at the speed they should, and they're not being as cooperative as I think they should be as well.
And what specifically do you think would be wrong with that solution, working with the DNR in the way you described?
Well, they're their responsibility. You know, they're the responsible party. They need to, to fix this. And of course, the DNR staff over the past 8 years is significantly smaller than it was. I don't believe the DNR has the resources these days to handle something like that.
And Cindy, the Attorney General was at the last listening session. That was, just Wednesday. The Department of Justice is investigating. Should there be criminal charges in this, or charges?
I think upon completion of their investigation, we'll answer that question. I would find a great deal of satisfaction in justice being brought to this issue, because I don't find it acceptable that they can knowingly contaminate. And really, Aaron, they were spraying this on the open ground for 40 years. Their best practices specifically say that that is not how you're to use it. You're not to use it during fire training or on open ground testing, yet that's exactly what they were doing for 40 years. So to pretend that they're just good corporate citizens and that they had no knowledge that this could potentially impact the community is very disingenuous, to say the least. So I'll leave that up to the Department of Justice, whether or not criminal charges should be brought, and we'll see how that shakes out.
And certainly standards have changed since the 60s, and as we become more knowledgeable about contaminants, would that be a factor at all?
Well, I don't know. When you ask me that question, I think back to some of the 3M safety data sheets that came out on the hazards of their product. and specifically letting the end user of the product know that it's a carcinogen and that it can create all sorts of problems, and so that the end user has the responsibility to make sure in how its end use is being disseminated, right? So if obviously do not put it in people's groundwater in a way that that'll happen. So that's not new. That's old information, and yet they continue the practices that they did. So it's been a very long, difficult 2 years trying to have any confidence in the messaging that they're sharing with the public.
Jeff, what can the public do to help solve this issue?
Well, there's some very significant legislation that's being worked on called the CLEAR Act. And this would address and give DNR the tools they need to address this type of contamination, not only in groundwater, but in surface water and in air. A lot of people don't realize, but one of the main sources for this contamination is air emissions from these facilities. What people can do is contact their senator, their congressperson, and tell them that they need to support the CLEAR Act. In my opinion, there's some games being played in the state right now that we see on the Republican-Democrat side, not playing very well together in the sandbox. And this is something that should transcend that. I mean, this is clean water for people. This is all their constituents. And people need to get out and let their congressmen and their representatives and senators know.
If I could piggyback on that point, I would definitely echo Jeff's sentiment, because before being part of this process, if somebody would have asked me to contact my representative and let them know an opinion I had on something, I would have disregarded them. I would have said, yeah, I'll get right on that, right? I wouldn't have believed it would be impactful. But after having gone through this and actually exercising that voice and that activity, it actually does impact change. So that's the one message I would really like to share with the audience, outside of being careful and learning more about PFAS, is to actually contact their state representatives and let them know whether or not clean water matters to them, because it will make a difference.
When we're talking about PFAS, I'm reminded of the PCBs and the Fox River contamination and how long it took to clean that up. I mean, do you think this is going to be a process too for Marinette County?
Absolutely. A matter of fact, I was a project manager on the first operable unit cleanup on the Fox River back in the late 90s. And so, yes, they're just finishing things right now. So that was a 20-year process. And it won't surprise me if that's what the time frame we're talking about up in Marinette.
Well, Jeff Lamont, Cindy Boyle, thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Save our H2O, and we'll be right back.